The training hall of the alien warship was loud with the sound of metal weights, clashing practice weapons, and the proud laughter of warriors. In the middle of the hall, a lone human stood. Adjusting the straps on his training gear, he was smaller than most of them, his muscles lean but not bulky, and his movements quiet. The alien soldiers around him towered over him, their armor shining, their eyes filled with pride in their own strength. One of them stepped forward, a tall, silver-skinned female soldier with sharp, graceful features. Her name was Lysera, known for her unmatched strength among her people. She crossed her arms and looked at the human like she was studying and amusing. "Insect, you don't belong here," she said with a smirk, her voice carrying across the hall. "This training is for real soldiers, not fragile creatures who break after one hit." The other aliens chuckled, their voices like low thunder. The human named Aaron said nothing. He simply nodded once and stepped toward the weight station. The test was simple. Lift the heavy grav rod and hold it for 10 seconds. The grav rod was made for alien warriors. Its weight increased by artificial gravity to test raw power. Lysera leaned against the wall, watching him with a smile that said she was sure he would fail. Aaron wrapped his hands around the rod, his arms shaking slightly as the gravity field activated. He lifted it slowly, his jaw tight, the weight pulling against his bones. 5 seconds passed, then 6, then 7. A murmur went through the watching crowd as he held it longer than expected. Finally, the weight became too much, and he let it fall with a heavy thud. "Not bad," Lysera said, tilting her head. For a human, her tone made it clear she still thought little of him. Aaron only gave a small shrug, walking away toward the next test. In that moment, a loud alarm blared across the warship. The floor trembled, the lights flickered, and a deep mechanical groan echoed through the walls. "Gravity field failure in Sector 4. The automated voice announced before anyone could react. The artificial gravity shifted violently. Warriors stumbled, equipment slid across the floor, and Lysera herself lost her footing. She was thrown toward a line of exposed training machinery with sharp edges. Aaron moved without thinking, his body slamming into hers to push her out of the way. They both tumbled to the ground, the impact rattling his ribs. Lysera blinked up at him. Momentarily stunned, he offered her a hand, his breathing heavy. She took it without a word, quickly standing. "Thanks," she muttered, though her voice lacked warmth. Aaron didn't reply. His focus was already on the chaos around them. The crew was struggling to stabilize the training hall as tools and weapons floated in strange directions. Emergency teams rushed in, sealing off the dangerous machinery. The gravity field slowly returned to normal, and everyone began to regain their balance. Lysera brushed dust from her armor. Glancing briefly at Aaron, she didn't say anything more, but something about the way she looked at him had changed. Was quick, almost hidden, but it was there. Flicker of curiosity where before there had only been scorn. Later, when the hall was cleared, Lysera stood at the entrance watching the human leave. One of her fellow soldiers stepped beside her. "Strange little creature, isn't he?" The soldier said. Lysera's eyes narrowed. "Maybe," she replied. But he didn't hesitate to move when it mattered. The soldier laughed. "Still, he's no match for a real warrior." Lysera didn't answer, but deep inside, she wondered, why did he not speak up for himself earlier? Why did he help her without hesitation? That night, the warship drifted through silent space, its lights dimmed. Aaron sat alone in the crew quarters, repairing a torn strap on his gear. He could still hear Lysera's mocking words in his head, but they didn't bother him. He had been underestimated before, on Earth, and now out here among the stars. He knew strength wasn't just about muscle, it was about endurance, about refusing to let go when it mattered. Far away in her own quarters, Lysera couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the moment he pushed her away from the machinery. She remembered the grip of his hand pulling her up. Steady despite the chaos, she told herself it was nothing, that she would never need help from a human again. But some part of her knew the galaxy was full of dangers, and the next time trouble came, she might find herself relying on that stubborn, quiet strength once more. The next morning, the training hall was alive with energy again. The alien warriors had recovered from the gravity malfunction, and now they wanted a different kind of entertainment. Word had spread about the human who lasted longer than expected with the grav rod. Some laughed, some dismissed it, but a few were curious. Lysera, however, stood in the center of the hall, her eyes scanning for him. When Aaron walked in, quiet as always, she called out his name, her voice cut through the noise. Making everyone turn. "I challenge you," she said simply, her arms crossed. The other warriors murmured in surprise. A duel between a human and the strongest female soldier was unheard of. Aaron frowned. "I'm not here for games," he said, his tone calm but firm. Lysera smirked. "It's not a game, it's a test, unless you're afraid." The word afraid echoed around the hall. Aaron's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to her taunt immediately. He knew this wasn't about proving himself, but about her pride. Still, with the entire hall watching, refusing would only make things worse. "Fine," he said at last. "But I'm not trying to impress you." The crowd moved quickly, clearing space in the center. To practice poles were brought out long. Metal staffs waited for training combat. The duel would be decided by endurance. Whoever stayed standing would win. Lysera twirled her staff with ease, the metal humming as it cut the air. Aaron tested the weight of his own, feeling its balance. The match began with a sharp chime, and Lysera struck first. Her blows were fast and precise, the staff ringing as it clashed against his. He blocked and stepped back, using minimal energy to deflect. Instead of meeting her power head-on, she pressed harder, her strikes growing stronger, her grin widening as she tried to break his guard. Minutes passed, the sound of metal against metal filling the hall. Sweat beaded on Aaron's forehead, but his stance remained steady. Lysera began to notice his pattern. He wasn't trying to overpower her. He was letting her spend her energy, frustrated. She attacked faster, swinging with enough force to push him back several steps. But each time he recovered, his eyes locked on hers without flinching. The crowd grew louder, some cheering for Lysera, others now whispering about the human's resilience. Finally, Lysera launched a powerful strike aimed at his side. Aaron twisted, letting the blow glance off his staff, then stepped inside her guard. For the first time, she stumbled, just slightly. He didn't press the advantage, but returned to his stance, breathing evenly. "Why aren't you fighting back?" she demanded, circling him. "I am," he said, "just not in the way you expect." Her eyes narrowed, and she lunged again. The duel continued, the minutes stretching into what felt like hours. Every muscle in their arms and legs burned. Yet neither would quit. Then, without warning, the ship's alarms blared again. This time, wasn't a malfunction. The deep, warlike tone meant only one thing: incoming enemy vessels. The voice over the comm announced. The duel stopped instantly. Both combatants turning toward the hall's exit. Lysera dropped her staff, grabbing her communicator. "All units, to battle positions," came the captain's order. The hall scattered into motion, warriors grabbing weapons and armor. Aaron moved toward the armory, but Lysera caught his arm. "We're not finished," she said, her voice lower now. "Don't think this changes anything." He met her gaze. "It might," he said quietly, before walking away. The corridors of the warship filled with soldiers running to their posts. Aaron was assigned to an auxiliary squad, ready to defend. The lower decks. Lysera's unit was positioned closer to the ship's main entrance point. The ship shuddered as the first enemy shots struck the hull. Lights flickered, and the distant sound of explosions rattled the air. In the chaos, a message came through the Comsta squads, including Lysera's, had been cut off by a hull breach. Aaron felt his stomach tighten. He wasn't sure why. But his feet moved faster toward the damaged sector. He didn't have orders to go there. But something told him he had to. The path was dangerous. Sparks, smoke, and debris made every step a risk. Finally, he reached the damaged corridor through the haze. He saw Lysera and 3 other soldiers trapped behind a collapsed bulkhead. They were trying to lift the debris, but the unstable ceiling threatened to crush them if they moved. Wrong. Aaron called out, his voice carrying over the alarms. Hold on, Neem coming through. Lysera's eyes widened, and for a moment, her pride faded. She nodded, her face serious now. No trace of mockery left. Aaron started pulling at the debris, his muscles straining. It wasn't about being the strongest, it was about refusing to stop until it moved. The metal groaned, shifted, and finally, with one last heave, the path opened enough for them to slip through the moment they were free. The ship's structure shook violently again. A section of the floor gave way, and Lysera nearly fell in two. The opening, Aaron grabbed her arm without thinking, holding tight. Her earlier words echoed in his mind, but now she said nothing. Her grip on his hand tightened, as if she already knew the truth. The warship's corridors were chaos. Red emergency lights flashed against the steel walls, painting everything in an urgent glow. The deep thrum of the ship's engines mixed with the sharp hiss of venting air. Aaron and Lysera moved quickly, their boots pounding against the floor. They had escaped the collapsing section, but the battle outside was far from over. The cum crackled with urgent voices. Enemy boarding parties in Sector 9. Someone shouted, "Seal all bulkheads and defend the inner decks," came the captain's order. Aaron looked around. Sector 9 was close, and it was also where the secondary power controls were located. If the enemy captured that area, the whole ship could be disabled. Lysera's steps slowed for a moment. Her injured arm, still sore from the training hall accident, hung slightly. At her side, "I can handle it," she said. When she caught him looking, he nodded. But he could see the pain in her eyes. They both knew that if things got worse, she wouldn't be able to fight at full strength. They reached the entrance to Sector 9, just as the first enemy shapes appeared through the smoke. They were tall and armored in jagged plates, their weapons glowing with alien energy. Without hesitation, Lysera drew her plasma blade, its blue light cutting through the haze. Aaron gripped his rifle tighter, feeling the familiar weight settle in his hands. The first exchange of fire echoed in the narrow corridor. Bolts of energy scorched the walls, leaving black marks across the metal. Aaron moved with quick, efficient motions, firing and ducking behind cover. Lysera charged forward, her blades slicing through the enemy's weapon before they could fire again. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and the heat of battle. But the enemy kept coming, step by step, pushing them back. Then, an explosion tore through the ceiling above them. Shards of metal rained down, and the floor beneath their feet groaned dangerously. Aaron felt the deck tilt. One wrong move, and the whole section could drop into the maintenance shaft below. "Fall back," he shouted, but the enemy blocked their retreat. Lysera swung at another attacker, her movements sharp but slower now. Her injured arm was weakening. Aaron stepped in, blocking a blow meant for her. The force rattling through his bones, they fought side by side. Moving toward the only safe route left a half-collapsed service tunnel on the left. But just as they reached it, more enemy soldiers appeared at the far end. They were trapped. The air grew thin as another hull breach opened nearby. Aaron felt the pull of venting atmosphere, trying to drag them toward the broken wall. He grabbed the nearest railing with one hand and caught Lysera's armor with the other. Her feet scraped against the floor as she fought to regain her balance. The enemy advanced slowly, confident that their prey had nowhere to go. Aaron's mind raced. They couldn't stay here. The lack of oxygen would finish them, even if the enemy didn't. He spotted a hatch on the ceiling above, leading to the maintenance conduit. But it was too high to reach without a boost. Up there, he said quickly. Pointing, Lysera glanced at it, then at him. You first. She ordered. He shook his head. You can't fight like this, go. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. Aaron braced himself, lifting her with all the strength he had left. She grabbed the edge of the hatch and pulled herself inside. The moment she was clear, she reached down for him, but before he could take her hand, an enemy soldier lunged at his back. Aaron spun, firing point blank, the blast sending the attacker crashing into the wall. The deck shook violently again. A deep, metallic groan signaled that the floor beneath him was seconds from giving way. Lysera's voice was sharp now. Aaron, come on. He jumped, catching her wrist, the impact sending pain through his shoulder. She pulled hard, helping him scramble into the narrow conduit. The hatch slammed shut beneath them, just as the floor gave way. Through the small gap in the hatch, they could see the corridor falling into the dark maintenance shaft below. For a moment, the only sound was their breathing, echoing in the tight metal space. Lysera leaned against the wall, her eyes meeting his. There was no mockery now, only a strange mix of respect and something she didn't want to name yet. Aaron looked down the long, dimly lit conduit. It would take them deeper into the ship, away from the main battle, but also away from the rest of the crew. They would be on their own, somewhere far below. Another explosion rumbled through the hull, and Aaron knew this was only the beginning of the danger. The maintenance conduit was narrow, forcing Aaron and Lysera to crawl in single file. The metal walls were warm from the energy pulses running through the ship's systems. Every sound, distant gunfire, muffled explosions. The hiss of air escaping somewhere far away echoed through the tunnel. Aaron moved ahead, checking for any loose panels or dangerous wiring. Lysera followed close behind, her breathing steady but slower than usual. They had been moving for almost 15 minutes when Aaron stopped. A faint red light blinked on the wall ahead. He recognized it instantly, a sign that the section beyond had been sealed due to structural damage. That meant there was no easy way forward. We'll have to bypass this part, he said, turning to look at her. Lysera's eyes narrowed. Where? Aaron pointed to a small side hatch halfway up the tunnel wall. It led to an older maintenance chamber, one that wasn't on most maps anymore. It's risky, he admitted, but it's either that or go back toward the enemy. She gave a short nod. Lead the way. The hatch was heavy, but together they managed to pry it open. A stale, cold smell drifted out from the darkness beyond. Aaron pulled a small light from his belt, the beam cutting through layers of dust and floating particles. They stepped inside, careful not to disturb the old wiring and hanging pipes. The room was silent, except for the distant hum of the warship's engines. Halfway across the chamber, a sudden metallic crash echoed behind them. Aaron spun around, rifle raised, from the shadows. A figure lunged at an enemy scout who had found their trail. Aaron fired, the shot striking the alien's shoulder, sending it sprawling. But before he could finish the job, two more enemies appeared from the opposite side. Lysera stepped forward, her plasma blade igniting with a hiss. Her movements were sharp, precise, but Aaron noticed her left arm trembling from strain. He moved to cover her, firing bursts to push the attackers back. One of them managed to close the distance, swinging a jagged blade at him. Aaron blocked it with his rifle, the impact knocking the weapon from his hands. The alien raised its weapon again, but Lysera moved faster. She intercepted the blow, her blade slicing through the attacker's weapon and into its armor. The enemy dropped to the floor, unmoving. Aaron retrieved his rifle and finished the last remaining soldier with a well-aimed shot. Silence filled the chamber once more. broken only by their heavy breathing. "You're injured," Aaron said, noticing the blood on her side where the earlier fight had worsened her wound. "It's nothing," she replied, but her voice was tight. He shook his head. "Sit down." She started to protest, but when she tried to take a step, her legs wavered. Reluctantly, she lowered herself to the floor, leaning against the wall. Aaron knelt beside her, pulling a small field kit from his belt. She watched him carefully, her expression unreadable as he cleaned and wrapped the wound. "You've done this before," she said quietly. "Plenty of times," he replied, not looking up, "for soldiers you cared about." She asked, her tone carrying something unspoken for anyone who needed it. He said simply. Her eyes lingered on his face, searching for something. Finally, she looked away. "You fight like you don't care about yourself." He gave a faint smile. "I care," he said, "just sometimes the other person matters more." Before she could respond, a deep thud shook the chamber. The old pipes rattled, dust falling from the ceiling. Aaron looked toward the far wall, where the sound had come from. "They're trying to breach the hull again," he said. "If the wall gave way here, they'd both be sucked into open space." Aaron helped her to her feet. "We have to move." They crossed to the far side of the chamber, where another maintenance hatch waited, but when he tried to open it, it wouldn't budge. The sound of drilling and scraping grew louder behind them. The enemy was cutting through. Aaron braced himself, trying again with all his strength. Lysera stepped forward, placing her uninjured hand over his. Together, she said, they pulled. The hatch screeching in protest before finally giving way. They scrambled into the narrow passage beyond. Sealing it behind them, the moment it shut, the sound of the breach roared a rush of air and debris. Being pulled into the void, they sat in the dark passage for a moment. Catching their breath, Aaron could hear her breathing slow. He turned on his small light again, the dim glow illuminating her silver skin and determined eyes. "You saved me twice now," she said quietly. "I didn't keep count," he replied. For the first time since they met, she gave a small, genuine smile. It was brief, almost gone as soon as it appeared. But in that moment, the tension between them shifted. There was no mocking in her gaze, now only trust. And though neither said it aloud, they both knew that trust might be the only thing keeping them alive. The narrow passage seemed endless. Aaron led the way, his light cutting through the shadows. Behind him, Lysera moved slower, her injured side making each step heavier. He could hear the faint rasp of her breathing, the sound too controlled to be panic, but too uneven to ignore. Still, she didn't complain. They reached a cross-section where the tunnel split in two. Aaron paused, checking the markings on the wall. "One way goes to the cargo hold," he said. "The other?" "To the engine support beams." Lysera stepped closer, her eyes narrowing at the sound of distant vibrations. "Cargo hold will be overrun." She said, "We take the beams." They moved left, the floor under them changing from flat steel to grated walkways below. Aaron could see the dizzying drop to the massive rotating parts of the ship's engines. The roar of machinery filled the air. The walkway trembled with each pulse of the engines. Aaron kept one hand on the railing, making sure Lysera followed close. Halfway across, the ship shook violently. A sudden blast from somewhere above rattled the beams. Part of the walkway broke loose, the metal groaning as it tilted. Aaron managed to grab the main railing, but Lysera was thrown forward, sliding. Toward the edge, he lunged, catching her wrist just as she was about to fall. Her body dangled over the drop. The roar of the engines below, like the growl of some mechanical beast. Aaron's arm strained, the sharp pain in his shoulder screaming at him to let go. The thin metal railing beneath his feet wobbled, threatening to give way entirely. Lysera's other hand reached up, trying to grab him, but she couldn't find a grip. her silver eyes locked onto his, wide with something he hadn't seen before. Fear. Don't let go. She shouted, her voice trembling. It wasn't a command. It wasn't pride, it was raw desperation. Aaron gritted his teeth, pulling with every ounce of strength left in him. Her armor made her heavier, the weight dragging him dangerously close. To the edge. Take off your gear, he shouted. She shook her head. No time, just pull. The metal beneath Aaron's boots screeched, bending slightly under their combined weight. Sweat dripped down his forehead, his muscles shaking. He shifted his stance, planting one foot against a beam joint for leverage. With a roar of effort, he pulled inch by inch until Lysera's arm cleared the railing. Finally, with one last heave, she collapsed into him, both of them falling back against the wall. They stayed there for a moment, breathing hard. Her head rested briefly against his shoulder. Why? Why didn't you let go? She asked between breaths. Because you asked me not to, he replied simply. She closed her eyes, the tension in her body slowly easing. The moment didn't last. From the far end of the walkway, enemy soldiers appeared, their weapons glowing. Aaron pushed Lysera behind him, lifting his rifle. The walkway's narrow width forced the fight into a straight line. One wrong move could send any of them into the engines below. Energy bolts zipped past, one grazing Aaron's arm, the heat burning through his sleeve. Lysera stood beside him, now her plasma blade flashing. They fought together, each covering the other. One enemy lunged. Aaron sidestepped, and Lysera cut him down in a single motion. The rest hesitated, realizing that even wounded, the two of them were too dangerous to face head-on. They began to fall back, but Aaron knew it wouldn't last. We need to move, he said. They ran toward the end of the walkway, the floor shaking beneath their steps. Another blast hit somewhere below, making the whole structure shudder. A section behind them collapsed into the engines, the roar growing louder as debris was shredded. By the time they reached the safety of the next platform, the walkway was gone. Aaron turned to look back. If he had let go of her, she would have been lost with the rest of it. Lysera followed his gaze, then stepped closer. You should know, she said, her voice lower now, when I asked you not to let go. I wasn't just talking about this fall. He met her eyes, but before he could answer, the ship's alarm blared again, signaling another incoming wave. They didn't have time for more words, but as they prepared to move deeper into the ship, Aaron knew something had changed. She no longer looked at him as the fragile human she mocked on the first day. Now there was something else. Trust, respect, and maybe something even stronger waiting to grow. The battle outside the warship still raged. But inside the inner decks, a fragile quiet had settled over Aaron and Lysera. They had found a small service room, reinforced walls, sealed doors, and a working air filter. For now, it was safe, but both knew the safety wouldn't last forever. Aaron sat on a low crate, checking the charge on his rifle. Lysera leaned against the wall across from him, her breathing slower now. The dim emergency light painted her silver skin in soft shadows. Her usual, sharp, challenging gaze was gone, replaced by something heavier. She was studying him in silence, as if trying to understand something that had been in front of her all along. You didn't hesitate, she said suddenly. Aaron glanced up. When? On the walkway, she replied. You could have saved yourself. But you didn't. He shrugged lightly. It wasn't really a choice. Her brows knit. It was. You just made it faster than most would. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the air filter filled the space. Aaron began wrapping a fresh bandage around the burn on his arm. Lysera pushed away from the wall and moved closer, kneeling in front of him. Let me, she said, holding out her hand. He hesitated, then handed her the bandage. Her touch was firm, but careful as she wrapped the burn. It was strange. Her movements were precise, like a warrior. But there was a gentleness he hadn't expected. "You know," she said quietly, "I was wrong about you." Aaron gave a faint smile. "You were sure about that from the first day." "I thought strength was only in the body," she admitted, keeping her eyes on the bandage. "But you don't break when things get heavy," he chuckled. "Plenty of times I've bent almost to breaking." "Almost," she said, looking up now. Their eyes met. And there was no mockery in hers, only respect, before either could speak again. The comm unit in the corner crackled to life. The captain's voice came through, slightly distorted. "All units, regroup at the central hold. We're pushing back the borders." Aaron stood, checking his rifle again. Lysera tightened her armor straps, her movements slower but determined. As they left the safety of the service room, the corridors felt different, not just because the enemy had been pushed back, but because the air between them had shifted. They moved together with an unspoken understanding. Aaron no longer had to prove himself to her, he already had. And Lysera no longer looked at him as the fragile outsider. When they reached the central hold, the scene was a controlled storm. Alien soldiers worked in coordinated teams, sealing breaches and guarding supply crates. The air smelled of burnt metal and plasma fire. The moment Lysera stepped in, her fellow warriors noticed. Some gave her nods of respect. Others glanced curiously at the human walking beside her. One younger soldier smirked. "The human kept up with you." "Didn't think that was possible?" Lysera's gaze turned icy. "He did more than keep up, he saved me." The soldier blinked, taken aback, and quickly looked away. Aaron didn't react, but inside he felt the weight of her words. It wasn't just an acknowledgement, it was a public statement. The captain briefed them quickly. The enemy had been repelled for now. But scattered boarding squads were still loose inside the ship. Aaron and Lysera were assigned to clear one of the lower decks. It was quieter there, dimly lit, the air filled with the faint hum of the ship's systems as they moved through. "The shadows," Lysera spoke again, her voice low. "You know, when I mocked you, I thought I was protecting my pride." Aaron gave a small smile. "And now? Now I think I was just protecting myself from being proven wrong," she said. He glanced at her. "You don't strike me as someone afraid of being wrong." "I wasn't afraid," she said, her eyes meeting his. "I just didn't expect." They reached the end of the deck, finding only empty rooms and sealed storage units. The silence there felt different. Not dangerous, but almost peaceful. For a few moments, they stood without speaking, the tension of the past hours fading. Lysera finally broke the quiet. "You've changed how I see humans." Aaron raised a brow. "That's a big statement." "It's the truth," she said simply, before he could respond. A distant metallic sound echoed through the hall. Both turned instantly, weapons ready. The sound faded again, leaving them in stillness. Aaron exhaled slowly. "Maybe it's nothing, or maybe it's something," Lysera replied, her tone calm but alert. Either way, they both knew the fight wasn't over. But now, there was no question whatever came next. They would face it together, and in the soft glow of the emergency lights, there was a new weight in Lysera's gaze. Not challenge, not arrogance, but trust, clear and unshaken. The ship's internal alarms had fallen silent for the first time since the attack began. The warship's corridors felt still. The main enemy force had been driven away. But a few scattered squads still roamed inside. Aaron and Lysera were moving together toward the upper decks, tasked with clearing the last hostile pockets. They walked side by side, their steps steady and sure. There was no need for words. They had already said enough in the way they fought, in the way they trusted each other. The deck lights flickered faintly above them, the ship's systems still recovering from the damage. Through the bulkhead windows, stars drifted slowly past, a reminder of how small they were in the vastness of space. As they turned into a narrow maintenance corridor, movement caught Aaron's eye. He raised his hand for Lysera to stop, A shadow shifted in the dim light ahead, the sound of metal scraping against metal echoed through the hall. Lysera's grip tightened on her plasma blade. 3 enemy soldiers emerged from the side passage, their armor dented but weapons still ready. Without hesitation, Aaron stepped forward, rifle raised. The first blast came fast. He ducked, returning fire that struck one soldier square in the chest. Lysera moved like a silver flash, closing the distance to the second enemy. Her blade sliced through the weapon before they could even aim. The third tried to retreat, but Aaron's shot dropped him before he could escape. Silence returned to the corridor, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's engines. Aaron lowered his weapon, glancing at Lysera. "You're getting slower," he teased lightly. She raised a brow. "Or maybe you're finally getting faster." They continued toward the upper deck. The closer they got, the more signs of the recent battle. They saw scorch marks on the walls, sealed bulkheads, and medics tending to the injured. When they reached the command deck, the captain himself was there. He turned to Lysera first, nodding, "Good work," holding the lower sections. Then his gaze shifted to Aaron. "And you human, your actions today were noted." Aaron simply nodded. He wasn't one for speeches, and he didn't need the recognition. But Lysera stepped forward, her voice clear. "With respect, Captain. If Aaron hadn't been here, I wouldn't be standing." The captain raised his brow but didn't question her, only giving a short nod before turning back to his crew as they left the command deck. Aaron glanced sideways at her. "You didn't have to say that," he said. "I wanted to." She replied without hesitation. They reached the lift that would take them to the crew quarters. Inside, the hum of the machinery surrounded them. For the first time since they met, there was no tension in her posture. She stood closer than before, her silver eyes softer. "When I mocked you the first day," she said slowly, "I thought I was making a point about strength." Aaron looked at her. "And now?" "Now I know strength is also not letting go," she said, a faint smile touching her lips. The lift doors opened to a quieter section of the ship. They walked down the corridor together. Passing crew members glanced at them. An alien warrior and a human walking in sync was not a common sight. At her quarters, she stopped, turning to face him. "You know we're going to be sent on more missions together," she said. "I can handle that," he replied. She tilted her head slightly. "I wasn't asking if you could handle it. I was telling you I want you there." Aaron smiled faintly. "Then, I'll be there." For a moment, they simply stood there, the quiet hum of the ship around them. Then she reached into her belt pouch and pulled out a small metal crest, engraved with her people's emblem. "This is my family's mark," she said. "I've never given it to anyone outside my kind." He took it carefully, the metal warm from her hand. "Why me?" he asked. "Because when I asked you not to let go," she said softly, "you didn't." Her gaze lingered on him for a moment longer before she stepped back. Aaron slipped the crest into his pocket. They didn't need more words. What they had been through spoke louder than anything they could say. As he walked toward his own quarters, he glanced back. She was still standing there, watching him. And in her eyes was something that hadn't been there before: trust, loyalty, and maybe the beginning of something neither of them fully understood yet. The warship continued its steady journey through the stars. There would be more battles, more dangers ahead. But Aaron knew one thing for certain: no matter what came, they would face it together. And he also knew, deep down, that the day she mocked his strength was the same day she began to see the truth of it. She had asked him not to let go, and he never would.